Well, joining me now to discuss whether the government should be subsidising childcare at all are Kate Andrews from the Adam Smith Institute and Jennifer Howes, the co-founder of Brit Mums. Thank you, both of you, for joining us this morning. Before we get started, a reminder that you, of course, can join in the debate. Tweet us at Sky News or at Sky Samantha, including the hashtag Sky Debate. Text us 84501 or email news@sky.com. Let us know what you think, and if there's any points you'd like me to put to our guests here, I'll read some of your comments out as we go along. So, Kate, to you first. Should the government be subsidising childcare in the first place?
Look, some of the largest costs for households, especially low-income households, are housing and childcare. And some families can be spending over £6,000 a year on childcare alone. And this problem is twofold. It's incredibly expensive, but the problem is twofold. The first is that the UK has some of the highest government regulations on childcare in all of Europe. The staff-to-child ratio is higher than it is almost anywhere else in Europe. The costs are incredibly high for nurseries, and that drives costs up for consumers. But the second problem is the subsidies. And when you have an incredibly regulated system that's going to cost a lot of money, and then you pour subsidies into that system, you're just going to perpetuate a vicious cycle of high spending. So what we really need to do is step away from the subsidies briefly, because the Preschool Learning Alliance estimated that it was going to cost $1.5 billion extra just for these 15 extra hours a week, and start looking at how we can deregulate the childcare market. I think it's very important that we do keep some subsidies for families to be used to have access to childcare. It gets more women back in work when they want to be going back to work, and it's incredibly helpful for low-income households. But we can't continue to subsidize a system that just costs too much money.
Jennifer Howes, Kate Andrews thinks we should deregulate the market to bring costs down, and then the government won't have to subsidise the childcare sector.
Well, I think we'd like to think that the market can step in and the market has the answers. But in areas like childcare or caring in general, that's just not the case. We don't want the care and education of very young children to be driven solely by a profit motive. And so the government does have a role, because there's a benefit not only to those individual families, but to society as a whole, to the economy as a whole. And the market really alone can't meet the needs of parents.
Kate, you're talking about deregulating the market. Surely the priority for parents isn't actually the cost, it's the standards of childcare that their children get. They don't want to shove them into a nursery and they put them in front of the TV all day and there's 10 children being looked after by one person. There's a danger that could happen if you deregulate the market.
Well, the priority is the standard of childcare until you just can't afford it anymore. And then the priority is figuring out a way to make sure your child is at least somewhere safe when you're going off to work. But this is a huge over-exaggeration. I think it's outrageous to say that places like Germany and Sweden and Denmark, which have no staff-to-child ratios, no requirement at least, are dangerous places to leave your kid when you go to work. It's not the case that if you slightly deregulate the market, if you make costs slightly cheaper for nurseries, if you give parents slightly more access about where they can be sending their kids during the day, that all of a sudden everything's going to go up in flames. I think a lot of parents would be desperate for this kind of choice, and it would bring costs down for them at home and allow that income to go somewhere else.
Jennifer Howes, let's move the discussion more towards actually how children are looked after. Do you think that parents feel a huge strain on their finances if they want to go back to work? We know that a lot of women decide not to go back to work because of the huge cost having their children looked after. So do you feel that the government has a role here to subsidise the cost, to bring more people back into the workforce, increase their tax revenue at the end of the day?
Absolutely. As a parent myself, I know how I felt in talking to Brit Mums members across the UK. Parents pretty much feel like they're left to fend for themselves. So it's a patchwork of nurseries and family and babysitters and au pairs and childminders, and those all cost. You have to work around your hours. You have to work around a spouse or partner's hours. And so it's incredibly complex. And most parents that I talk to feel like they have to sort that all out themselves. So when they want to they want to go back to work, but eventually it all becomes too complex. They discover they're not going to be making enough, and so they end up not.
Kate Andrews, you're against subsidies per se, but there's an argument that actually, at the moment the government provides childcare vouchers and parents can do what they like with that money. They can either pay a nanny or they can put it towards a nursery. So if we are going to have subsidies, should the government actually say, OK, here is the cash, do with it what you will, and then it gets rid of the problem that, the standards of the nurseries that you were talking about, but it helps people, whatever they choose in terms of childcare, pay towards that?
I believe strongly that if we're going to have any kind of redistribution, and there certainly is a place for it in British society, that money should be going straight into the pockets of parents and people, whoever's receiving it, to spend the way that they see fit. It's the most efficient way of spending that money, and it's the best way because people tend to know what's best for them in that particular moment. Let me just say that I'm not opposed to all tax credits across the board for childcare. As I said before, I think they can be incredibly useful, especially to families on low incomes. But the problem at the moment isn't arguing against all subsidies and all tax credits. It's arguing against the idea that we're going to throw more money, over £1 billion more into just perpetuating a cycle of high costs in a very, very regulated high cost market. That's not efficient for anybody. It's not efficient for the taxpayer, and it's certainly not good for parents who need to spend more than 30 hours a week on childcare, who will be paying some out-of-pocket costs, who are going to see the price of that childcare, especially out of their own pockets, go up and up and up.
Jennifer Howes, it's a really confusing system, isn't it? Because the childcare vouchers system, as I understand it, will continue if you want to, although you can't opt in now. It's kind of an old system. But if you want to pay for a nanny, etc., then these funds won't go towards that, only towards a nursery. It's such a headache for parents, this. Why can't it be simpler?
Exactly. I think that exactly what you're saying. You can use vouchers, but you can only use them with certain types of childcare, and those may not fit with your family. I mean, I think most parents feel like this will be a step in the right direction. Government acknowledging that childcare is a huge part of family life, it's a huge part of working life in the economy. It's a step in the right direction, but these 30 hours are not a magic bullet. They need to be fully funded, as Kate was mentioning. I mean, nurseries can't lose money on this, otherwise, they're not going to be on board with the system. Basically, we need to think kind of holistically about childcare and how it plays into both family life and to kind of larger society and the benefits of it.
Jennifer, let me put a couple of tweets to you from some of our viewers. Dave has tweeted saying the cost has gone up for childcare. My car tax has gone up too. Nobody's helping me with my car tax. Why are we being asked to fund childcare? Annette says, I believe the government should not only fund nurseries but pay for all children to attend. Child benefit should be scrapped to pay for it. A couple of interesting thoughts there. What do you make of them, Jennifer?
Well, I think that's a common theme. People saying, I don't want to pay for things, whether it's childcare or certain roads or whatever, that I don't use. But the fact is, we all benefit from quality childcare. Studies about how children who are well educated and well looked after go on to become valuable citizens and contribute to the economy, contribute to society. And so while people who don't have children or people who completely pay out of pocket for their child care might bristle at the notion, ultimately we all benefit.
OK, very good to talk to you both. Kate Andrews, Jennifer Howes, thanks for joining us in that debate today about childcare. Thank you.
Still to come on Sky News this hour.
Back on the score sheet, back in the groove. Benfica there! Premier League football, don't you just love it?
Upgrade to Sky Sports and enjoy a great weekend of Premier League football.
At the first stop for fuel, I'll get you an ice cream.
Yes! What I most love in this world is looking at each
With full LED headlights, DAB radio and sat-nav included, and active cylinder technology available for greater fuel efficiency, everyone can enjoy the Seat Leon FR. Well, almost everyone. The Seat Leon FR from £185 a month with our lowest finance rate at 0% APR representative.
Seat, technology to enjoy.
Have you started to plan your next cruise holiday? Well, before you book, make sure you join me and 250,000